Right, I think I'm ready. Are you guys ready? Cool. Let's rock and roll. Hey, 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 thanks for joining me. It's time for another podcast episode. So in this week's episode, I speak to Dylan Torraville, aka 3D Dill. If you've been following the podcast for a while, you will know that I had a conversation with him August last year. And when we spoke to him last time, he was still interning in Australia on the Daily Talk Show. Since then, he has gone back to Canada. Shortly after that, he went back to Canada to finish off his final year of studies. I decided to catch up with Dylan and find out how his studies went, how the pandemic has affected him and what's currently happening in Canada, as well as to find out what his future plans are. So, without wasting any more time, here's that conversation.
That's the story of it. What can I buy now?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, they've got quite a few options here in South Africa. I mean, they are a little bit expensive.
Yeah.
In comparison to other caps. Although I don't tell the truth, because if you were to buy authentic, say like New York Yankees or any of those American baseball or
those are
whatever,
crazy expensive.
Yeah, they're crazy expensive. And I mean, I had to decide whether do I wear this one?
Oh man.
Yeah, I bought this the last time I was in Canada.
I love that.
I had to buy one of these caps.
I love that.
Before I left. Yeah, so, right, how you been, man?
Oh, I've been good.
That's cool.
It's been weird. Like, it's a stark difference from the last time that we talked.
Yes.
But, I mean, all things considered, I'm doing absolutely fine because I'm healthy, right? And that's kind of the important thing.
That's good, yeah.
So.
Absolutely, yeah. So I was checking, the last time we chatted was in August last year.
Yeah.
Was that before or after you left Australia?
If it was August, I was still in Australia. I was in Australia up until basically my birthday, which is right up to at the end of August.
Okay. When is your birthday in August?
August 28th, end of the month.
Oh, okay. Cool. Okay. Awesome. Yeah. So when you went back to Canada, I mean, obviously it was a bit of an adjustment because you went back into your studies, right?
Yeah. Basically, I flew back on the 27th of August, and I was in the air on my birthday, and then school started for me anyways on September 3rd. My semester started September 3rd, and I had to move into the house that I'm living at in the city on September 1st. So I was home for 3 days, and then I was back living on my own again. So it was a super quick transition. Like within a week, basically, I went from coming back from overseas, moving back home, unpacking everything, and then packing everything back up once again, and then jumping ship and moving to another place.
Yeah. I mean, what was it like to be back home after being in Australia? You were in Australia for 6 months?
I was in 4 months.
4 months.
I would have liked 6 months. That would have been awesome. But it was quite strange. One thing that I remember when I first got to Australia was just looking around and seeing how different all the trees were. Like just seeing the gum trees and everything, which is totally different from the trees that we have here in Canada. And that was something that it was a difference that I never even thought to process before I went there. So when I got there, I see all these different trees. I was kind of shocked. And then come back to Canada, I'm looking around and I'm thinking, like, where's the gum trees? And like, where's all just the open fields? And coming back, my first when the plane landed in Toronto, it was an extremely humid and just hot, muggy day. And it was obviously still summer, end of summer there. And I had been in Australia for 4 months in winter. And I was used to the kind of 10 to 15 degrees, sunny, a little bit of a breeze. I was used to that for 4 months. And then I come back and it's just this hot, thick air and it's just sweaty. And I was like, oh, I want to get back on that plane and I want to go back. It was it was brutal, but it was quite strange. And even like coming back into my room for the first time in 4 months, I'm like, oh, this is like all the stuff is exactly where I left it, and it hasn't been touched in 4 months. But at first, it was almost like, is this? It still felt like I was going into a hotel room. It was like
Yeah.
kind of like just this sterile environment that had been on hold for 4 months, basically. But it was good to get back. Like waking up the next morning, trying to kill the jet lag, and I'm looking around. I'm like, I'm back home now. And 2 days ago, I was on the
Yeah.
other side of the planet. It's a
Yeah, it's
weird but
weird. Eh?
kind of a cool feeling, especially since it was so long, like 4 months.
Yeah.
So it was good,
Yeah.
good to be back.
Yeah, and I'm sure your family was happy to see you back.
Oh yeah, they were super happy. Like I had my sisters and my mom and my dad came and picked me up at the airport, and they were all like my little sister. I have two younger sisters. One of them's 19, and then the other one's 11. So naturally, the 11-year-old was like just starting to cry when she saw me walk through the gates because it was like it's
Mm.
been so long. And no, it was really good to see everybody when I came back because I even being away for 4 months, I missed both my parents' birthdays and Mother's Day and Father's Day. So that was, and I had
Yeah.
never missed those days beforehand. So it was kind of weird. So it was nice to come back and just be able to see them again. And now it's kind of like, well, I'm forced to see them every single day because I can't go out anywhere. So everything's
Yeah.
slowly balancing out.
So, are you back at home, or are you still living in the place that you were living in?
I'm back home now because the lease that I had for when I was living in Toronto ended at the end of April. But
Okay.
here, when we started noticing cases of COVID around like the beginning of March, and then by March 13th, I had come home for the weekend for school to like buy groceries and stuff, and then over that weekend they put in a state of emergency and shut everything down. So I was like, oh, I'm going to be home for good now. So a few days later, I went and I just moved all my stuff out. So I moved out a month and a half early from when I was
Early.
supposed to.
Okay.
But no, I'm back home in the parents' house now. It kind of feels like I'm back in high school again, to be honest. It's kind of weird.
Yeah. So, and I mean, how did it affect your studies, the whole sort of like state of emergency?
Oh, well, it wasn't ideal, that's for sure. It we were supposed to have we basically had a month left, so my semester ended on April, or was supposed to end April 17th, and we essentially got kicked out and everything shut down on March. They closed the school officially on March 16th, so essentially 1 month beforehand. And we had a client project that we were working with, and our thesis class, and kind of just another bird course that was just super easy anyway. So it was kind of weird. They basically gave us a week off so that the profs could figure everything out. Because obviously it was a big transition to go from teaching in class and then all of a sudden not being able to be in class. And you're kind of like, well, how's this going to work? So they gave us the week off. We kind of just waited to see what the profs were going to say. And they came back and said, this is how we're going to do things going forward. And everyone kind of accepted it. So it impacted the studies in the sense that getting critical feedback was a bit harder on these projects, um, just because obviously we couldn't sit down with them in person. And there's only so much kind of coherence that you can get through something like a Zoom call, for example.
Yeah.
But, and like for the thesis class where we have to make a physical model of our design, I'm fortunate enough that I have, like, my dad and I have a garage space and we have a workshop area that we can use. But I know that some other of my classmates don't have that. Like some of them live in apartments, and that's you can't spray paint an apartment because it's just poison. Um,
Yeah.
so I was fortunate enough to be able to finish my model with the space and the amenities that I had. Um, so it didn't affect me too much, but I know it did
Okay.
have a big effect on other kids who obviously didn't have that access. But like we still got all the projects done. We still got everything handed in on time, still got all the marks submitted and got the marks back that we needed to. It didn't, it was strange, and it was, especially for our last month of school, for some of us potentially ever, it was definitely not the way that any of us wanted it to end. But, and like some kids were obviously just super frustrated with it. Some of them just didn't want anything to do with this whole online school thing for finishing up the thesis year. But I figured, you know what, if I can just get it done, then I don't have to worry about it, and it can be,
Yeah, then it's done. Yeah.
I don't have to deal with it
Yeah.
anymore
Awesome.
after that. So that's how I approached it, and it turned out well. So made the most
That's
from
good
the
because I mean
situation.
so the last time we were chatting, you were still had ideas of what your thesis was going to be on or doing what you were going to do.
Yeah.
What did you eventually settle on?
So it's kind of a weird, it's a long process on how they help us determine our topics. So back when we spoke the last time on the podcast was in August, I still would have been going through the problem identification phase, where they ask us to go through and highlight 10 potential problem areas. And from those 10 potential problem areas, we obviously have to go through a bunch of criteria and write a bunch of stuff out to kind of prove the point that this is worth doing. And obviously, there's some ideas that are better than others. So, from those 10 problem identification statements, we narrow it down to 5, and then we narrow it down to 3. And then from those 3, we pick one. And that typically happens around the end of September. And the identification of the 10 starts in beginning of May, basically. So for the time that I was in Australia and like the time that we last chatted on the podcast, it was still figuring out those 10. And then once we got back to school, we were able to narrow it down to 5, 3, and then finally pick the final topic. So, and choosing the final topic is all based on another set of criteria, which is, can you make this project last for 4 months? Is there enough content, enough detail to research for 8 months? Because there's some that you could get done in a month or 2 months, right?
Yeah.
So, and there obviously has to be a credible opportunity to design something unique in that place. So the topic that I ended up going with, which was curated and kind of edited down to meet their criteria, and also encourage that there was 8 months worth of research to do here, was, and they like to phrase it with a how may we statement at the beginning. So it was, how may we mitigate challenges facing marine biologists in the Canadian Arctic? So it was all about just being specific and focusing and focusing and focusing, kind of making it as refined as possible. Because the initial one was, how may we aid, or how may we improve the productivity of marine researchers? It's like, well, aiding the productivity is a bit generic. And a marine
Yeah.
researcher could be anywhere in the world. Like, you could be studying sharks in South Africa, or you could be doing stuff in the Antarctic. It could be anywhere. So that was why it became more and more focused, because that just helps, especially helps with the research, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, solving challenges for marine biologists in the Canadian Arctic was what I ended up doing for 8 months. Long story short.
And what was the solution?
Well, the solution is, the way that the profs like to kind of tailor it is that it's all research-based design. So we have to go out, we have to do interviews, obviously like literature reviews online, reading research documents, which is
Yeah.
kind of boring.
Just
But
a little.
yeah, just, oh man. But
How many of them did you get through?
oh, so many, so many. I think my final report had like 71 or 72 different research document sources. But
Oh wow.
the solution ended up being an amphibious mobile research station, which essentially is a highly mobile mode of transport for these researchers. And a lot of it's very conceptual, because a lot of the engineering, you can't prove the engineering in an 8 month period.
Sure.
But kind of puts the researchers in, maybe you would call it like a super advanced glorified bus on these giant wheels, and it can kind of just crawl around the Arctic. And there's this unique observation pod thing that can deploy beneath the ice with these robotic arms, and allows the researchers basically to be underneath the ice, so that if they're, in the example of they're studying whales and they know there's whales nearby, they can be underneath the ice studying and observing in the marine environment, as opposed to just relying on what's in the air. And a lot of the research focused around creating a more environmentally sustainable solution, because a lot of the current methods that exist either use gasoline or propane fueled machines or helicopters. Yes. And helicopters are naturally very expensive, and just the physical cost to operate them is super expensive. And a lot of times weather has a big impact on whether or not they're actually able to go out and use this equipment. Like even a snowmobile, you can't go out riding a snowmobile in negative 50-degree weather. So the aim of my solution was kind of create an enclosed space that protects them from the outside environment, but still allows them to move around on the ice itself, and essentially just try and be more sustainable in all aspects, and give them the space to analyze data on site, as opposed to having to go out, get the stuff, go back, analyze it, go back out, wait and hope you find something, and then come back. Because currently it's a lot of just start here and then go there and then go all the way back. Whereas what I tried to pitch with my concept was, you can leave here, you can stay here, and you can do what you need to do. And then you can move on to another spot, and then another spot, and then another spot. And when you're finally done, then you can leave.
Okay.
So that was cool. Long story short again.
No, that's cool, man. It sounds awesome.
Long story longer.
And when you were creating your model and all that, did you get to use your 3D printer?
Oh, I abused my 3D printer. It was great. I had it going. I started printing parts for it on Valentine's Day. So February 14th, I started printing, and I took the last part off the print bed on March 11th. And it was going basically every single day.
Yeah.
All the time.
Wow.
There were 2 prints that took 36 hours each. So for basically 3 days, they were just doing these 2 parts that I would then have to glue together. And the final thing weighs like almost 8 kilograms. Oh, just because there's so much plastic on it. Yeah. But I've given the 3D printers right below my desk here now, so I'm giving it a break.
Bit of a rest.
Yeah, it needs it. It started screwing up, and I had like just a handful of parts left to build, and it just started just doing all this weird stuff. Either the bed wasn't level, or the extruder was too hot, or I thought the extruder was broken, because it messed up like 4 prints in a row. And I'm just sitting here panicking like, no, you need to work. I need to get this done. But I just reset like every possible setting on it, and it worked fine.
Good.
Turned it off and on again, and it worked fine.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. And I was telling you that I've been using mine to print these frames for these face shields for the guys here, for the health workers. So one of the universities here, UJ, which is the University of Johannesburg, contacted me and asked me if I would be willing to donate. So I'm just using whatever filaments I've got left. That I'm just printing as many as I can. Yeah. So my print is also just going 24 hours a day,
all the time,
7 days a week.
It's a good. I think it's a good thing to do. Like I tried to get a hold of some filament because I had used up all mine for school. I tried to get a hold of it once this thing started really going off and the cases started going up, and everyone was like, there's a demand for this, and we need just a more feasible solution for it. But I couldn't, even now, at least where I am on Amazon, it's still taking like 4 weeks to ship filament in at the earliest date, just because I think everybody's been buying it. So,
but also a lot of the stuff is made in China, so there's been a bit of a delay there because they closed their factories. Because here in South Africa, like just computer spares, computer parts, laptops, that kind of thing. The guys are talking 2-3 months backlog.
Really?
Back order, yeah.
Wow.
So it's getting hectic. So, I mean, what's it like now in Canada, in Toronto? You guys still locked down? What can and can't you do?
Basically, what can't you do is most everything. You can't, maximum amount of people you can have in kind of a setting is 5 people, and they should all live in your house, as far as what I'm concerned, as far as I know. There's no group gatherings. They're only just starting to open up businesses that have like roadside access or curbside access. They're allowing those businesses to open that are considered non-essential, allowing those businesses to open to do curbside pickup, basically. So a customer could order stuff online, and then the person in the store kind of gets it ready and then brings it out, puts it on the curb. We went to get cat food for my cat yesterday, and the girl was inside the store and had like a set of tables blocking the door. So then she opened the door and said, "What can I get you?" and stood like a good 10 feet back. And I said, "And we need this bag of whatever cat food." So she went, got the cat food. And then to pay, there's like a big window at the front, and then they had taped out a sign that says "Place credit card here." So she stands on one side of the glass and then holds up the machine, and we stand on the other side and put the credit card, and it reads through the glass. Yeah, this is just strange. Exactly. But they've, like, it's just so bizarre. But most places in the city are still closed. Like,
all right,
we've got 2 giant highways that go in and out of the city, and even on a quiet day, they're still packed. But now they're virtually empty. It's kind of like a scene from The Walking Dead. I remember in the first season, and you just see the empty road leading into the abandoned city. It almost looks exactly like that. It's full on. It's
crazy when you think at how busy it can be, you know.
Yeah.
And now it's nothing, you know. It's hectic.
Yeah, it's still hard to kind of understand, because it doesn't seem like something that should be happening in this time and place and in this world that we have. Yeah. But I mean, it is. Yeah. And it's kind of like someone saying the world's on fire, and you look outside and then nothing's burning. You're like, but it looks fine.
Yeah, it looks fine, yeah.
It's how is it where you are though?
So South Africa, they locked down fairly quickly. So towards the end of March, they did a national lockdown, and basically you weren't allowed to go to work. Nothing. The only thing you could do was go to the supermarket and the pharmacy, the chemist, the drugstore. What else? And essential workers, like whether if you were, like essential workers, you know, what's an emergency services, that kind of stuff. Okay, supermarkets, so supermarkets were open, but then what they were doing is that they were like, they weren't doing it everywhere, but they would like only let a certain number of people go into the supermarket at a time.
Right.
Social distancing in the supermarket. What else was there? And then it's opened up a little bit. We've gone from what was known as, we've got different levels, and so the total lockdown was level 5, and now we've gone down to level 4, where some things are people can go back to work. But if you can work from home, they recommend that you work from home. And if the people are going back to work, only 30% of the workforce is allowed to go back. And then, so like one thing that you're not allowed, there's no alcohol and no cigarettes that are allowed to be sold.
I saw that.
Yes, I tell you what, the people are bitching and moaning. It's like the people are starting to go mental. But I actually don't understand. I don't actually understand the rationale behind it, because, they gave some figures of how much revenue the government has lost, the tax revenue service has lost, due to there not being sale of cigarettes and alcohol. And I mean, it's like astronomical, right?
Yeah.
And then, and also like, I mean, you can just imagine a person that smokes on a regular basis. Okay, I don't smoke, so, but I mean, I know, people people are going to be edgy, and now what's happening is they're buying the stuff on the black market, and so I mean, from a health point of view, if they really worried about people's health, I mean, they're going and buying these cigarettes that are off the black market. You don't even know where they're coming from. You don't even know what chemicals are in them.
Exactly.
So people are actually, so I don't know. I don't agree with it. But anyway, it is what it is. And then like, so for instance, like restaurants and takeaway joints and all that, they had to close. They weren't even allowed to deliver or do the curbside thing. They've now opened that up. So restaurants can be open, but only for delivery. So like now Uber Eats and that kind of stuff, you can order stuff like that. And then online sales, you could only buy essential items. So there would be groceries and that kind of stuff. But they then opened it up to, when they were starting to talk about open the schools again, they then said, okay, then that's fine. You can buy electronics. So like laptops, computers, stationery, that kind of stuff. And now, I think it was yesterday that they said, okay, all online stores, you can buy anything online now. So the guys are back and up and running there. So we've got a service which is, I suppose, like South Africa's version of Amazon. It's called Take A Lot. And so you can basically, they've opened up everything on their store now. So that's great. I mean, I've been ordering. I love ordering stuff online. I love receiving stuff. So, I've actually what I've done. It was so funny because just before the lockdown, I was setting up a podcast studio space, which I'm actually in at the moment. And just before the lockdown, I was probably like 90% finished, and then we had the lockdown. So all construction work and all that wasn't allowed to go on, but I've finished off now in the last week. Just finished off the final bits and pieces. It was just like getting some network cable in, sorting out the electrics. I've hung up some curtains here just to do some sound dampening and that kind of stuff. But then I thought, I need another monitor, and so I could order stuff online. Like all my bits and pieces.
I did the same thing when I got back. I was like, I can get a monitor. If I get a monitor and I put my laptop over there, then I'm going to need a wireless keyboard. If I need a wireless keyboard, I'm going to need a wireless trackpad and a wireless mouse just in case I need to use both. So the credit card's just been going just. It's like I'll pay it back at some point.
Yeah, cool. And now that you've finished your thesis and all that, what's the plan?
Well,
under current circumstances.
Under current circumstances, I've been. See, while this thing sucks, and while it sucks that everyone has to be locked inside, and the state that we're in isn't necessarily great, it's given me the time. It's given me like 2 months off of any responsibility. So I've been able to take that time and use that time and build up my portfolio that I didn't have the time to do in school, so that I can actually now go have that as an asset and use that to apply for jobs. It's given me the opportunity, obviously, to just refine my resume, build up my website, which I basically, I bought the domain and just didn't use it for almost a year because I just had no time to properly dedicate the effort to, because I was trying to do school and trying to just do all this other stuff. So basically, since the day that I submitted my thesis, I've just been going through and working on the portfolios for different projects in school, working on the website, trying to learn all this SEO stuff and kind of just make everything, try and build up a profile and a market for myself, so that when everything comes down and I can go out and properly apply for a job, I hopefully stand out a bit more than what I did before. So figured if I'm going to be locked inside for a number of months at a time, I might as well make a productive use of it. So there's a job opening at a bike company in the US actually, but I've ridden their bikes a bunch, Trek bikes. They've
Okay.
got an opening for a helmet designer, and I've
Right.
had a connection at the company for just over a year now. We like me and the one of the industrial designers there connected on LinkedIn, and I've chatted a bit. So I'm gonna try for that job anyway, and if I can be super fortunate and get it and work remotely for the first bit, then that's cool too. If not, then it's just a learning curve and just kind of roll with the punches and apply for apply for other jobs. Like I'll put my name out there because I don't want to just not do that for 4 months. Because there is, like you were saying, especially with the face masks, like there is a need for designers or manufacturers and people to help with stuff.
Yeah,
So I don't
absolutely.
just want to stop for 4 months or however long it ends up being. But it's there's definitely not as many jobs or even internship opportunities.
Mm.
Like a lot of the third year students that are in the school now that were supposed to be in the position that I was last year, where I had applied for an internship and gone out and gotten the place and worked at the place for 4 months. A lot of those kids had their internships canceled because the business either had to shut down or the business was working remotely, and or the business just couldn't sustain. If it was a paid internship, the business just couldn't sustain bringing on another full-time employee for 4 months, especially during what's going on. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, I mean,
it's
this
been,
thing is going to change the world landscape,
mm-hmm.
indefinitely. I think things eventually will go back to some sort of level of normality, but I think the kind of this kind of situation creates new opportunities, changes the way that we work, the way
Mm-hmm.
that we behave. Like for instance, in South Africa, online shopping. It's been growing every year, but there are a lot of people that don't do it because they're scared of credit card fraud or whatever
Yeah.
it is. And I think this is now going to force those people to use it because it's the only way you can buy some of the stuff.
They have
And
no,
they're going to realize it's not that bad. And after this, online shopping is going to be a thing in South
yeah,
Africa,
it's going to be huge,
or
even
more
bigger
or
than
more than it was before. And like for instance, like now, I've been working from home since the end of February,
really.
and I work in IT. I do software support and development.
Mm-hmm.
Work a lot with data and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, I've got good broadband connection at home, and I've got the workspace, and there is nothing in my job that I can't do from home.
Mm-hmm.
So like now, all of a sudden, like the guys are now saying, okay, well, do we really need the office space that we have? Because
Yeah.
we already were thinking of moving,
Oh yeah.
because our main offices are downtown Johannesburg, which can be a little bit dodgy after hours.
Right.
And so there's been a lot of talk about, okay, moving to a new premises and all that kind of stuff. And it's just come at this time now, a large portion of the workforce are working from home. So I think that's going to change as well, because before there was this a little bit reluctance to allowing you to work from home. I don't know if it was a trust issue or because, I mean, we could always do it. We had the facilities. And also the collaboration tools have just been getting better and better every year.
Oh
So the
yeah.
last 5 years, I mean, we were using Skype for Business. Now we're using Microsoft Teams. So, as a collaboration tool, and also people were very reluctant to use those tools for collaboration. And now they have
Yeah.
to. And the functionality that you would normally just not even use because it's just easier to do it in traditional ways. Now all
Yeah.
of a sudden you've had to use these features. You had to learn how to use the application properly. And now I think things are just going to be different from that point of view.
Oh,
I mean, you're talking
definitely.
about the third year students and internships and everything. My daughter's in her final year of high school.
Oh man.
So first of all, I mean, this is her last year of school. So this is the year that she was supposed to, pull out all the stops.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden, now she's had to become accustomed to doing online learning, right?
Oh,
So it's like, it's bad timing. But the way I see it is that the way that I see it is that it's actually a good opportunity for her to learn this discipline of, learning, online learning, learning, distance learning, whatever you want to call it. I mean, when I left school, I went and I studied at an institution, and you go to lectures and you bunk or skip lectures, and the whole thing. And I only really learned how to structure my time and studying and all that when I did a degree via distance learning. And that's when I had to become disciplined. I had to create a schedule. I had to, get the work in to be able to submit the assignments and, plan my studies so that when the exams came, there were no lecturers or, if you didn't you had to find out how to answer the question or, collaborate with your fellow students or whatever it was. So, in a way, I'm thinking it's actually beneficial for my daughter because, like, now she's going to be like almost fast-tracked into that sort of discipline where she might have only really kicked in second or third year of varsity or whatever it was. So I think it's good, even though, like now, I think last Friday was supposed to be her, what we call matric dance. I suppose, I don't know, the Americans would call it prom. I think what did the Aussies call it? They called it formal. Their formal dance or something. Yeah. So I mean, she hasn't had to have one of those. And I mean, like in high school, you're looking forward to this event, the social event at school.
It's the big thing. It's the big thing everyone looks forward to.
Yeah. So who knows? Maybe they might be able to have it this year. Maybe they won't.
Yeah, so, I mean, hopefully.
That's a bit sad.
It's kind of like a rite of, like, especially in American culture, it's kind of like a rite of passage. Like, you finish high school and you go to prom. That's given. And I know a lot. I think they've postponed some until like November here for some schools. Like, I was supposed to have my convocation where I walk across a stage and pick up my degree in a big hat and a robe. That was supposed to be, I think, a month from now, actually, in sometime in the middle of June. But obviously that won't happen because there's something like 4,000 kids that have to go there. And then if 4,000 kids bring both of their parents, then that's like at least 12,000 people. That's not going to happen. So it's not going to happen. But I want to say they've pushed it off to September or November, hopefully.
Yeah.
We have to see how it goes, right?
Mm. Yeah, it is. Yeah, so I think, and I mean, like for you in the kind of position that you're in, the kind of industry that you're in, I think this kind of thing is going to create new problems that we didn't have before. And it's the type of, your type of industry that's going to come up with these solutions, to these problems. Yeah. So I think it does create some opportunities, but obviously it creates some issues for other people. I feel very sorry for the small to medium-sized businesses in South Africa because they're not operating. Some of them can, but a friend of mine who's in construction, he can't get going. I've got lots of friends that are musicians. They can't go and do live gigs or whatever, so they're having to resort to the online stuff. But everyone's doing online stuff now. Even like in the podcasting thing, all of a sudden I've noticed there's so many podcasts that have popped up in South Africa. And I suppose in a way it's good because South Africa's podcast industry has been a bit slow. It's hard work and you spend your life educating people about, what a podcast is, why should I be listening to it? Oh, where can I find it, etc. Now all of a sudden in the last 3 weeks, it's like all these podcasts are popping up everywhere because people, exactly. But it's a good thing for the podcast industry if you want to put it that way. At first you go, oh shit, there's competition. Oh my God, what am I going to do? I got to step up my game kind of thing. And so like I had a moment there, I have to admit. But the thing is good for the industry because now all of a sudden people got more time. So they're listening and consuming more content and more podcasts popping up. So, I think it's cool. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, it's definitely good. And if there's more people out there and there's more competition, then that only acts as a motivator for you to produce even more and more high
Yeah,
quality
yeah,
stuff, right?
absolutely. Yeah.
And
And I mean,
everybody.
the thing is, yeah, and I mean, I experienced this when I got into 3D printing 4 or 5 years ago, is
Hmm.
that, 3D printers were very scarce. They were expensive. Not many people had them. Not many people knew what it was about.
Hmm.
They didn't even understand what you could do with it. And now all of a sudden there are lots of 3D printers. But the thing is that the industry has grown, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So there's this it's not as if, so I mean, I do it as a service. In other words, like people contact me and I'll print for them.
Right.
I have seen a dip in that, but I mean, I don't advertise a lot, where I used to advertise a lot more than I do now. And I used to do almost like cold calling, but it was more like going to educate people about what was possible with 3D printers.
Hmm.
So I think people have now realized what that is. They've seen the value of it and then gone and bought their own printer instead of
Yeah.
coming to someone like me that offers it as a service. And the same thing's happening with podcasts. A guy contacted me the other day and asked me, okay, can I help him with OBS and setting up Skype? And he had heard about me from another guy, another podcaster. So,
Oh yeah.
things do change, but I think it's for the best,
Oh,
It's
absolutely.
good.
You always have to
Yeah.
look at the bright side of the situation that you're in. Otherwise, it's just so easy to get down about it, and it's easy to look at the negative side of it because it's right there all the time. But I think being able to ignore it and look at the positive, like you were saying, like creates more competition, but it pushes me. It's growing the network. I'm now connecting with a bunch of these other people. I can now help educate people. I think that's an important thing to take away as well.
Yeah, and I think also like for you, I mean, like the natural thing would be, okay, you finish your studies, are you going to find a job? Okay,
Hmm.
well, that might not be as easy as it used to be, kind of thing. So you're going to maybe look at the situation differently. You're going to start looking for opportunities that you might never have looked for before, or whatever it might be. It just means that you just look at the situation differently,
Exactly.
which is cool, yeah. And
Definitely.
you haven't thought about writing another book?
I've thought about it, not seriously, but I've thought about it.
Yeah.
Um, it's funny because the book is still on Amazon and it's still available for download or for purchase, but I can't. There's a way that technically, as the creator of the book, I can go in and I can put it on sale through
Okay.
accessing my account. However, I created that account and I'd registered the ISBN with my unknowingly at the time, registered it with my Australian phone number, which is now no longer active. And Amazon has this great setup where they use two-step authentication. So one of them sends you an email, which is still active, and it then sends you a text asking you to enter in a code. And that code is no longer valid because the phone number is no longer active. But they don't know
Ah,
that.
shit.
And the only way to get in contact with them to change that is to call them at their
From that
customer
number.
support from
Oh,
that
yeah.
number through the support service. So I'm just like, all right, well, we'll just leave it at
Oh,
that.
okay.
I'll figure out a way around it eventually, I'm sure, try and
Yeah.
reactivate the number or something. And
Yeah.
but yeah,
And
I've thought about it, but I don't know what I would write it about. Maybe I'll write it about what I do. Maybe I'll write it in a year about what I did this past year,
sure.
especially in
Yeah.
this time, because that could be kind of interesting.
Still trying to figure it out.
I'm still trying to figure it out, part two.
But yeah, that's cool. Geez, now I was going to ask you something now it's gone out of my head. Oh,
I'll
shit.
try this one.
Anyway, no, it's fine. Yeah. So I was going to ask you about your photography. I mean, is that a hobby of yours? I mean, always been a hobby, or did you?
Oh, see, this is a great story, and I love talking about this because it was back when I went to Australia. I had this like a Sony digital zoom camera, and I didn't. Growing up, I thought I knew how to take pictures, and I thought I knew what photography was all about. Um, but I think that's kind of the same thing of like anyone with a smartphone goes around and takes a picture of a flower, thinks they know how to take pictures. Um, so, and like working with Tommy and Josh and Mason at the Daily Talk Show and big media, even just seeing how Josh would, when we would go out onto a shoot and we would film stuff, just watching how he held the camera and like listening to how him and Tommy would talk back and forth about these different things that I thought I understood, but turns out I had no idea at all. That kind of made me think of like, okay, well, I have a camera and I know how to turn it on and I know how to click the shutter button, but I genuinely don't know how to use it. I thought I did.
Yeah.
But it turns out I really didn't. So when I came back from Australia, we had the Sony camera, which I took with me, which was, they were kind of just like your average family camera that you would get if you want to take pictures at a birthday party or whatever. But my dad had bought an older Canon DSLR, like a beginner level DSLR for my younger sister when she was in high school, taking the photography class in high school. And one of the requirements was like a DSLR, and it's like less than 100 or like less than $500, so it's relatively affordable. And it still has like the two basic kit lenses, like a zoom lens and then just a wide angle. So I took those to school with me and just started playing around and trying to learn all these different things. And then once I started to learn how to use it and the quality of the images started getting better and like composition started getting better and all these different things, I'm like, okay, I'm starting to understand it. And then that obviously just motivated me just to do it more and more and more. So then I'm thinking I have to buy a hard drive now because I have all these pictures on an SD card,
Yes.
and I have to buy more SD cards because I'm running out of room. And then I thought, I was like, well, what if I buy a microphone and like start making videos like I wanted to do when I was in Australia? So I did that, and then I found my mom's old 35 millimeter film camera. So I
Oh, nice.
bought a bunch of film recently. Actually, I spent like $100
Mm.
on 35 millimeter film to use during this isolation time. I've just been firing those off, and then thinking, okay, well, I have an image now. Now, how do I go about posting it online, or how do I figure out editing? Like, it's so easy to over edit a photo, I've noticed, and I've done it
Yeah.
thousands of times. So now it's been like, okay, well, now I can properly learn how to use Lightroom, and I can properly learn how to take a portrait or take a landscape photo. And it's uh it's it's still a hobby because I don't make money from it, obviously. It would be nice. I'd like to it's something I can see myself getting into as kind of like a freelance gig with the photography. So
Yeah.
hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, there's this guy, I don't know, have you got TikTok?
No, I
No,
don't.
don't get TikTok. I promise you'll regret it. But anyway, there's a guy on there, there's a photographer on there,
Mhm.
and his story is that he got kicked out of photography school.
Oh
Right.
yeah.
We'll take that. We'll take that. We'll believe him on that one. But
Yeah.
so what he started doing is he started taking these like just going up to random people and just asking them if you could take their photos, like portrait,
Oh yeah.
mainly girls, obviously. And but I mean, seriously, the guy has been taking some awesome photos, and now
Yeah.
for every photo that he posts on TikTok, I think he's getting 1 million views.
Wow.
And he's doing it full time now. So I don't know what his revenue stream is. I don't know how he makes money from it. But
Yeah.
what I'm just saying is that there theoretically a guy who didn't hack it in film school has gone and
Mhm.
created some opportunity for himself using some social media platform. But the guy takes good photos. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll send you his or maybe I shouldn't because then you're going to go on TikTok.
Then I have to get
Or
TikTok.
maybe I'll
No,
send you his
I'll
Instagram.
download it just to see it. I'll download it just to see
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Well, listen, dude, I lose time on TikTok. It's I don't know what the deal is with TikTok. I mean, I'm just going to check for 5 minutes, 2 hours later, kind of thing,
Yeah. All my
Yeah.
friends, and I'm like, I refuse to get it just because you're on it all the time.
Yeah. So, I mean, other than, say, like the photography aspects, I mean, what else did you take away from your experience with Tommy and Josh?
Definitely a lot about working for myself and kind of creating my own opportunity for things. Like obviously, like Josh and Tommy had worked worked for companies and worked for other people for a long time before starting the podcast and starting big media company together. But it's made me see that even if I end up working for a company or an agency for, say, 5, even 10 years, that only leaves me at like 30 or 32. And that still leaves just a whole bunch of time to do my own thing. So I've been able to think, like, even in this quarantine time, it's been able to give me the opportunity to think a lot about what could I do as a freelance position, whether it's like, because I love the whole brand identity design stuff. So I'm thinking that's a completely viable option. Same thing with like painting and illustration. Like, that wasn't anything that I learned from Tommy and Josh, but learning how to market and how to sell those services. And like Tommy and Josh produce, and Mason and now George produce like super high quality stuff for the podcast, but also for clients.
Yeah.
And that's a big selling factor, is that, yeah, you're paying for these skilled people, but you're also paying for a breadth of high quality equipment that is going to help properly execute that vision. Like, you could film it with just a basic handy cam and do all this stuff, but when you show up with like a Canon C200 and a bunch of boom mics and all these, then the good lights, high quality lights that make the client look good, it's a big deal. And it's definitely shown me that while I don't think gear or equipment necessarily should be a primary focus, it definitely does help inform kind of your credibility. But also just how, like Josh especially, just how stringent he is with like marketing himself, and just how willing he is to kind of do whatever it takes to get a message or get a point across or just tell a story. That was definitely something that I took away from that. And then Tommy, I learned a lot from Tommy just listening to him talk on the phone, because our desks faced opposite directions when I was at big media company. So he was looking this way and I would be looking the other way on opposite sides of the studio. And he would get a call sometimes of, what's it called? Like, a client would call him, and like as soon as he sees that it's a client, he picks it up and he knows exactly what he needs to say and exactly how to talk. And again, that was something that I'd never been exposed to before that, or never even realized that I hadn't been exposed to it. So then me hearing it that way, I was like, oh, okay, I can take that and I can learn from that. And now, even when I noticed that when I was talking to professors in school, trying to sell them on my idea to do a project, I found myself thinking like, oh, that's like Tommy would say something like that. So it's a lot of people skills, a lot of technical skills, and then obviously just the importance of just pure organization. Like, I always thought I was organized, quotation marks, thought I was organized, and then seeing all like the back catalog of stuff and how they've arranged everything. Like, you could ask for like the most randomly specific thing, and you could probably find it in less than a minute.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like they've got it down pat. I'm thinking, well, there's no reason that I can't do that. Just because I'm not a business or not a company right now doesn't mean I can't implore that. And so, yeah, like I learned so much from them. Like, it was an unpaid internship and I had to pay my way to get there. So I was in debt going to and coming home from that trip. Monetarily, I was in debt. But in terms of the experience that I get, I could not have paid for that in any possible way. Like, it was completely priceless. So it's something I'm going to be grateful for forever, is that experience.
Yeah, that's great. Eh? And look, I mean, I've been watching the podcast for a long time now. And, as a podcaster, I'm like looking to them as like almost like the benchmark. In other words, like, okay, that's where I want to get to. That's the quality I want to get to. Sometimes I'm not as pedantic about it as, say, perhaps Josh is.
Very pedantic.
Pedantic is the right word. Yeah, but I mean, I'm just amazed at what they are able to do. I mean, look, I've got a day job. I'm stuck. Life is so busy, but I still do
Yeah.
the podcast. I mean, like in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, geez, they're like doing one every day. Okay.
Yeah.
Plus, they still got a business.
Yeah.
You know, it like blows my mind. Okay. So I'm the only one that's in this at the moment. But I definitely, what I'm saying is I'm looking at them and saying, okay, well, that's where I want to be. When I get there is another story. But that's, I mean, the quality of stuff that they're putting out is amazing. And, you know, how they pivoted now, you know, working from home, and then they're doing two live shows a day. And then, you know, all the stuff that they do is just like, it's just going at a pace that amazes me, to be honest. So I've got a lot of respect for them.
Oh, it's
obviously the content. I feel like, you know, like for me, it's like, you know, when I'm listening, like you feel involved with the whole thing. You feel part of the, you know, the Gronk squad and whatever. But I mean, they've just got such an amazing way of making people feel included in the whole thing. It's like, you know, like you're hanging and having drinks with your mates on a Friday afternoon. Well, their afternoon, my morning. I can't really drink because it's 8 o'clock in the morning and I'm at work.
Yeah, you've got a job.
Tuning into Friday night drinks, you know. But yeah, no, listen, I mean, they do an amazing job.
They really do.
Yeah. And I mean, are you thinking about maybe going back to Australia?
I see.
Even holiday or work or?
I had planned to go back like at the end of this year so that I would end up there in the summertime, and I would stay for maybe 2 weeks, probably more of a vacation than anything. But now that obviously won't be the case just because of the whole travel restriction. Yeah. So I like within the next 2 years, I'd like to go back because I don't want to put a long time between trips going there and back. But no, I'm going back there 100%. And I also want to go and see other states when I'm there too, because I spent 99% of my time in the state of Victoria and then even more time in Melbourne. So I was really only in, I was in Sydney for 36 hours basically, which was still super cool. But
yes. And you made the most of it.
I made the most of it.
Apparently.
I want to go and I want to see the outback. I want to see red dirt. I want to go up. I'd love when I go back to see snakes, because that was one thing that I didn't get the chance to see because it was wintertime. Saw nothing. Naturally.
Don't worry, you can have that. You can have all the snakes you want.
That was like my first introduction to Australia when I was a kid, was like reading all these books about snakes and then talking about all that. And even on like TV shows, I would watch he's South African, Austin Stevens Snake Master. I watched him a bunch as a kid, and he was super cool too. And I used to watch that show all the time, and like he would go kind of all over the place. And the ones when he was in Australia trying to find all these dangerous snakes were like my favorite. So I was like super obsessed.
Yeah.
From that day on. I don't plan on getting bitten by one because it's not exactly an ideal scenario, but
no.
I'd love to see one in person. Like the first time seeing a kangaroo in the flesh was like the coolest thing ever. But a kangaroo is just not as cool as a snake, in my opinion. A snake is just like,
really?
It's up there.
Yeah, so I've got a friend who breeds ball pythons.
Oh, yeah?
So fortunately, they're not... venomous and all that kind of thing. So I've been slowly but surely desensitizing myself to my fear of snakes by going to visit this guy and playing with these small ball pythons. I think he's got over 100.
Whoa!
Different colors and everything. Yeah, I'll send you some photos.
Yeah,
you can have a look at it, because I mean, there I can understand people. They have the snake because of the beauty of the color of the skin, and they get these different markings, and they've got special names for them. Yeah. I mean, they've got like thousands and thousands of official colors, if you want to call it that, of all these different snakes. That I can appreciate. Mm-hmm. But like when you've got a brown, I mean, here in South Africa, we've got a thing which is called the black mamba, which is probably the most dangerous snake. I mean, and Yeah, dude, if I see one of those things, boy, I think I'll
you
walk
run
on
as far
water,
away
I'll
as you can.
fly, I'll do anything. Yeah, anyway.
That's the thing. Like
Yeah.
we don't have. I think we only have one species of venomous snake in Canada, and it's a tiny little rattlesnake. About I think max size is they get maybe 12 inches, and it's a
Okay.
Mississippi rattlesnake. And the poison, like the venom that it has, is just not lethal at all. Like I think it makes you vomit or something, but to like a fully grown adult male, it's not gonna hurt you or anything.
Okay.
Um, so I think that's just another thing as well, is we're not exposed to the severity of these snakes as much as like having a
Like in Australia.
we have these little garter snakes which are just they don't even have teeth. They just kind of just slither around and eat bugs, and
Okay.
they get is like 15 inches. But having a garter snake in your backyard is a lot different than having a black mamba in your backyard. So
Oh yeah, yeah.
there's a bit of
And I mean, those black mambas
this,
are quite aggressive as well. Because I mean, a lot of snakes will just disappear
yeah,
if you come across them. Whereas like a black mamba is very unpredictable, very aggressive,
yeah,
very very long and big, and moves
yeah,
like lightning.
yeah.
You know
They're
what I
very
mean?
fast.
Yeah. Anyway, so let's starting to hyperventilate here, talking about snakes. Yeah, no, I can't. You know, Dylan, I mean, we're up for an hour.
Oh, really?
I'm not going to take, time flies when you're having fun, eh?
I'd say so.
But before you go, I've got to ask you about your model in the background there hanging
Hmm.
off the ceiling, your plane. What is that? That looks like is it a
Oh, I've got a bunch.
B-17?
So this one up here is a uh, B-52 Mitchell
That's
warplane
right,
model
yeah.
that I made when
Okay.
I think I was 11 when I made that. And then there's a model, I don't know if you can see it, but it's up on top of that bookshelf right there.
Yeah,
And it's a
yeah.
model of the Queen Mary 2 cruise ship,
All right.
which I made when I was 13, I think.
Okay.
And then right up there is a model of the Blackbird.
Oh,
One of the
the SR-71.
yeah, that's it.
Yeah, it's my favorite plane. That
Oh, it's wild, isn't it?
it's like
It's super
it's like
cool.
s- yeah, it's so cool. I mean, I've read up on the specs on that plane. I mean, it's just unbelievable what that
It's
plane was doing when
uh,
they made it in the 70s. I mean, shit,
yeah, it's
unbelievable.
insane.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I
you've
was
always
building.
been into model making and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I got into it from I came across the Titanic movie somehow, and I'm like, man, that's a big boat, and it just sank to the bottom of the ocean. And I thought that was remarkably cool. So I went out, and for my birthday that year, my parents got me a little model kit of the Titanic, and that was kind of my like I always played with Lego as a kid, so I was always like
Yeah,
making stuff. And
yeah,
the model kits was kind of just a more, I guess you could call it like a more educational aspect to this making stuff and putting it together. So I got into that from building the little Titanic model. So I started off making that and then went into bigger and bigger and bigger things, and then obviously into the planes and all that. And I think that's what kind of made me go towards doing industrial design in school, was
yeah,
having that background in doing the model kits. I haven't done one in a while, mainly because I can't go out and buy one now, but
yeah.
they're super
But I
cool.
actually I find it very therapeutic, to
Oh,
build
oh yeah.
something, and it's quite satisfying. Yeah, because I mean, I also used to build quite a lot when I was a kid. Lots of army helicopters.
Yeah.
I was mad over helicopters. I almost at one stage wanted to become a helicopter pilot. But
Really?
in South Africa, it's not the same as being in the US or other countries that have got large military air forces and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, if I could choose what's on my bucket list to achieve in my life, one is to get my helicopter's license. But yeah, so I used to build helicopters and also lots of fighter planes,
Oh yeah.
a lot of South African stuff. or
cool.
not South African, but like the Mirage F1, CZ, Mirage F3, the Mirage 3, those kind of things.
Yeah.
And then many years ago, I'd get given this Formula One car. It's a 1980 Wolf.
Okay.
But this is not. I mean, this thing is so detailed. You had to build the engine. You had to put all the pipes in. It was like I used to sit on a Sunday evening for like 6 hours, Sunday afternoon into the evening for 6 hours building this, just like the engine or the brakes or the whatever it was, the suspension and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And so
that sounds awesome.
Yeah. So that. I enjoy that. It's good fun. And then also I got into radio controlled aircraft.
Oh yeah.
And I built my first plane that I flew. I built myself, not completely from scratch. I bought the fuselage ready-made, laser cuts and put together, and then I just got the wings.
Yeah.
Polystyrene covered in plywood, modeling plywood. And I took me about a year, maybe 18 months to build that thing, to finish it. And then I used to fly it, and then I crashed it. Bummer. Anyway, and then I decided I wasn't going to build another one. I bought a kit, which I've still got. So it's actually in the back room here.
Oh yeah.
I need to get up and start flying that thing again.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's also good fun.
I mean, now's the perfect time, so.
Yeah, I'll sneak into the park at night, and because we only allowed to exercise here in South Africa between 6 and 9 in the morning.
Oh.
Yeah, check that out. So if you want to keep people apart, get them to exercise for 3 hours a day, all at the same time.
Oh man, yes, it doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make sense. Make sense. Yeah. Anyway, dude, I'm not gonna keep you much longer. It's 7 o'clock here in South Africa, and
oh really?
I need to go and slap my kids. Feed my kids. Yeah. Anyway, listen, thanks so much for your time, and it's great to chat. And we'll continue staying in contact. I'll send you some photos and some links for you to check out.
Awesome.
Stuff that we spoke about.
Definitely.
Yeah. Awesome, man. So you must have a good weekend.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime, dude. Anytime, man. So
Awesome.
The next time you're launching a book, you gotta include me on your book tour.
First person I call.
And like I said, we'll stay in contact.
Awesome.
So it was great to catch up with Dylan. I was really glad to hear that he was able to finish his studies without any hassle. It was nice to hear that he's safe and sound in Canada. And this will definitely not be the last time we catch up with Dylan. So stay in tune for the next conversation. So as always, thanks for listening. Don't forget to rate on Apple Podcasts, subscribe on Spotify, and drop me a DM on Instagram or Facebook. And that, my friends, is the end. I'll catch you next time.